Good evening and welcome to the campus of UW-Whitewater. I'm your host, Kyler Foff, and alongside me today is Alex Monty. We ask you to please excuse our momentary interruption of sports from your regular daily schedule. Today we will be discussing everything to do with the NCAA tournament from both the men's and women's bracket. Let's get right into it. The NCAA men's championship game took place with UConn winning the tournament over San Diego State. To start off, who were the most notable players from each of these teams, and what was their pathway to the championship game?
Well, I feel like when it comes to UConn, you really have to start off with big names like Adama Snogo with 17.2 points per game average throughout the season and a 7.7 rebound average. Him, along with two other players, it's a fun little side note, Diarra and Johnson, had partaken in a Ramadan fast during the Final Four game against Miami. Obviously, they were able to prevail in the end, but of course there are other players in addition to the UConn victory.
Yeah, and those players would include Tristan Newton, who had 19 points and 10 rebounds in that championship game, and also Jordan Hawkins, who started off very hot and ended with 16 points and 4 rebounds in that game. Also, Adama Snogo was definitely the best player in the entire tournament because he got most outstanding player. He was also the MVP, of that game, having the most points and the biggest impact of the game. So UConn was definitely well-deserved for the title.
Absolutely. I mean, you just look at their path throughout the whole thing. They were just dominating. They crushed their opponents through and through, averaged 20-point differential throughout each game. I mean, you look at it against, Iona 24, St. Mary's 15, 23 against Arkansas, 28 against Gonzaga, 13 Miami, and of course 27 in the Grand Championship against San Diego State, which, I mean, just to put up so much throughout all of the games, throughout the entire tournament, was really unexpected, especially coming from the 4th seed. Didn't win any tournaments or nothing beforehand for like the conference Big East. So I mean, it was definitely a surprise, but of course, a 4 versus a 5 in the finals definitely adds the March Madness twist to it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's what makes March Madness so awesome, is that you never know if it'll be a 1 seed or even a 16th seed. It's never happened, but it could happen, and that's what's so fun about watching March Madness. So. But let's talk about San Diego State a little bit. I'd like to talk about Keyshawn Johnson. He was their leading scorer that game, had 14 points in that game. And then Lamont Butler also had 13 points in that game, coming off a game winner against Florida Atlantic. And then also Darian Trammell had a game winner the game before that against Creighton, and he also had a decent amount of points, having 13 in that game.
And of course, as you mentioned, there are big plays to those big players. I mean, with the Butler, that was the game-winning shot to send him to the championship. Obviously, the buzzer beater, a lot of excitement and a great way to get there. But then when it came to the Creighton game, the foul was in question per se. I mean, it came a bit late. It was after the clock had gone down, and then that essentially gave them the game. Not to put it into tampering or anything, but it wasn't how you really wanted to see it play out. It could have been better in overtime, but alas, it's how it ended up being. Of course, for San Diego State, this was still a great accomplishment. It was the first for the Mountain West Conference to have in the finals or even get past the Elite 8, I believe. So it was just really good for the conference, really good for the school, and it was just really good to see overall.
Yeah, and then transitioning to UConn. UConn was obviously in this position because of their great, history of that school, both the men's and women's side. Both of them, attract a lot of good young prospects, and then they come to UConn and they end up balling out just like Adama Snogo, and he ended up winning the most outstanding player of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about the history, I mean, honestly, they're in contention to be a blue blood per se. I mean, they've got 5 championships now, this being their 5th. And then even like each decade, they've had Jim Calhoun, obviously 99, 04, and 11. But when you just look at the 04, he won the championship. Ole won in 14, and then in 2013, it was Hurley.
Next up, we will discuss the biggest upsets in the men's NCAA tournament. Stay tuned for more on UWW TV.
We'd love to show you what it's like to be a Warhawk.
Come on!
Don't miss out on your chance to be a Warhawk.
At UW-Whitewater.
You belong here!
For Hawk Talk, especially on days I'm hosting, you really need to be up early looking at those news stories. Even the night before, I'm finding topics that I can incorporate in the show, and I feel like we get a conversation going.
Once you get the opportunity to do that with other people who appreciate it the same level as you do, it makes it that much more enjoyable.
For everything sports, tune in Monday through Thursday at 91.7 The Edge or watch us on UWW TV.
The UW Whitewater Bookstore is your one-stop shop for apparel, textbooks, and technology. Stop in for a wide selection of gifts from our alumni, family, and name brand sections. Need to purchase or rent a textbook? Head downstairs to Textbook Services. Check out our new custom shop and create personalized apparel for your organization. Need a charger, laptop, or headphones? Our new technology section has everything you might need. For more information and bookstore hours, visit uwwhitewaterbookstore.com.
Here at UW Whitewater Intramural Sports, we have a motto: a sport for everyone and everyone in a sport.
Come on! That's it anyways. Oh, she got that off, and they're going to count it.
Had a blast. Always have fun at intramurals.
Every day we strive to go above and beyond that goal by providing healthy exercise, promoting leisure education, and giving students that competitive atmosphere they are looking for.
Yes! Yes!
It's exciting. Brings me back to those high school days with Friday Night Lights.
With our 25 different intramural sports offered, we guarantee that we have a sport for you. Go to our website and find your sport today.
Welcome back to Please Excuse Our Momentary Interruption of Sports from your regular daily schedule. To continue on where we left off, what were the biggest upsets during the NCAA men's tournament?
I feel it's easy to just look at the big seeds and in the first round, because obviously this was just a crazy year. Look at the Final Four, the numbers. This was definitely not your typical season. Obviously Purdue being the second #1 seed to lose to a 16, and this one possibly even more monumental than the Virginia to UMBC, obviously with FDU. They were from the Northeast Conference, in which Merrimack had won the regular season title and also won the conference tournament, and despite that they were not eligible by NCAA rules, so then FDU had gotten in, but then they had to do the play-in game for the 16 seed. They were able to win that, and then they were averaging the shortest height for a team, playing against Zach Edey, like the biggest name and the physically biggest player, and then Purdue, like Big Ten would, disappointed and was unable to match that and actually be able to beat the 16 seed as they should. And I know I can speak from experience, the Big Ten has definitely busted enough of my brackets before, so fortunately I had steered away from that.
Yeah, and Farley Dickinson won that game 63-58 in the first round, so obviously that was the start of March Madness being madness in general, so that was definitely the biggest takeaway from the first round. Other than the #2 Arizona, they lost to Princeton 59-55. So it was definitely a big upset in the first round between those first two teams.
Yeah, and going back to Princeton, it was amazing that they were able to make it not only past that round, but then onto the next one as well against, I believe it was Creighton, in which they lost to. So, of course, every Cinderella run has to come to an end eventually, but it was definitely exciting for the time that it was happening. This was Princeton's first appearance since 2017, in which they were a 12 seed, obviously a bit higher than the 15 seed they were this year, and that was their, I believe it was 5th appearance in the tournament this millennium. So pretty good for the Ivy League school.
Another team that we can talk about having a big upset was number 2 Marquette. They lost to Michigan State in the second round, 69-60. Marquette was expected to go pretty far in the tournament, but obviously they were upset by Michigan State, so it was definitely a big upset for them. And then also number 1 Houston lost in the third round to Miami. They lost that game 89-75, so kind of a blowout in that game where it should have been towards Houston. Houston's a good defensive team, but they just weren't able to stop them that night.
And I feel like another 2 teams to bring up is the championship from last year, Kansas versus North Carolina. Obviously, Kansas got knocked out in the second round, which obviously a lot of people had them going a bit further. And then North Carolina didn't even make the tournament entirely. So that was definitely a lot of parity within this past tournament season.
And then the last one I would like to mention would be number 1 Alabama losing in the third round to San Diego State, who made it to the championship. So definitely was a thrilling March Madness to watch. Let's transition to the NCAA Women's Championship game. LSU won the women's tournament by defeating Iowa in the championship game. Who were the most notable players from each of these teams, and what was their pathway to the championship game?
I mean, I feel like you really have to start with Caitlin Clark, putting up not only 1, but 2 41-point games, including a 41-point triple-double. I mean, it was just an astonishing run she had. She was projected to be the best player within the tournament, for this season. And I mean, she was able to play to that above and beyond all expectations. I mean, even players like Steph Curry and Sue Bird were singing praises before the season. So a lot of weight on her shoulders, but she was definitely able to live up to the expectations. Unfortunately, the end result did not quite pan out. Obviously, LSU won 102-85 over Iowa.
Yeah, and Caitlin Clark, I mean, she still had 30 points and 8 assists, so she was the entire offense for them. But obviously, with Angel Reese going to guard, most of their athletic players, she kind of shut them down because she's kind of she's a bigger woman who likes to get into the paint and likes to, use her body and trying to score around the bucket. So it was definitely fun to watch that. She also won the Most Outstanding Player award. So, obviously if Iowa would have won that, it would have been clear to Caitlin Clark. So it just happened to be that the LSU Tigers won that game, so Angel Reese won that award.
And I mean, deservedly so, really. I mean, but LSU, they were definitely a good team coming into this. Obviously, they won the whole thing, so that's no surprise. But in addition to Angel Reese, they also had, I believe it was Alexis Morris, who was also projected as a high-end player throughout the entire tournament. But I feel like coaching is really what it came down to. I mean, you look at Kim Mulkey. This is her 4th championship as a coach, her first since leaving Baylor, in which she had gotten 3. She came back to her home state. She was, born and raised in Louisiana. She alma mater was Louisiana Tech, in which she won 2 championships as a player back-to-back in 82 and 83. So I mean, definitely great for Louisiana, great for Kim Mulkey, just really having an astonishing career and just continues to put up the numbers each season.
And a couple more key players I'd like to mention from LSU. He said Alexis Morris had 21 points. She also had 9 assists in that game, so definitely was a valuable asset to the offense. And then also Jasmine Carson had 22 points from her 8.8 point average during the season, so that was definitely a big come up for her. And then LaDasia Williams, she had 20 points, and she also doubled her point average throughout the season as well.
Yeah, and then of course there was the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark thing. Obviously, lately Caitlin Clark has come out and has said that no hard feelings, lots of respect. It was just trash talking that would come from any high intensity game such as a tournament championship.
Next, the biggest upsets in the women's NCAA tournament. You're watching PEOMIOSFYRDS on UWW TV.
Matt checking in to see how Sam is doing on his project. And it's getting close to exporting now, the final step in the process. And it is complete, and Sam is hyped. Finally gets complete and spikes the ball into the end zone. Sam's celebrating with his colleagues, and they throw a flag on the play. The ref's going to call excessive celebration. Sam is in disbelief and can't believe it. He tries to dispute the call, but the ref is not having any of it.
Crew is a faith-based organization for UW-Whitewater students. Their mission? To create an inclusive Christian community for students looking to explore or grow their faiths.
For me specifically, it's been amazing to just have people to walk alongside with my Christian journey on.
They always say to go and experience new things while you're at college, and I think this is just another one of those things that you should experience.
Crew welcomes all students and is held at Summers Auditorium on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Come join our crew.
The PB Poorman Pride Center is the place to go for LGBTQ+ resources, information, and community. Located in the Warhawk Connection Center, while there, you can meet people like Mia.
And I served Impact as president this fall, as well as working for the Pride Center. Impact is our queer LGBTQ+ and ally organization on campus. We meet once a week, and we do a lot of social events as well as education events.
It feels like I'm way more accepted here than when I was in high school. It is like a really big family.
Along with acceptance, in the Pride Center you can find a little library, a clothing closet, and a satellite location of the Warhawk Food Pantry.
It just feels like a home to me. You know, it feels like my home away from home, and there's such a community here that is so wonderful and full of joy.
For more information, follow the Pride Center on Instagram at UWW_PRC.
Welcome back to the show. Alongside Alex Monty, I'm Kyler Pfaff. To pick up where we left off, what were the biggest upsets in the women's NCAA tournament?
I mean, obviously you look at two of the #1 seeds, Indiana, Stanford, both second round exits, much like Kansas within the men's tournament. It was unfortunate to see they had some of the best players within the tournament, even going into it ranked on the top 25 list. Stanford had Cameron Brink, and then Indiana had Mackenzie Mahomes, not Mahomes, just Holmes. And she had finished second in some of the awards. Obviously, Caitlin Clark had just about swept every single award that there was to be had, unfortunately for her.
Yeah, she was definitely the best basketball and women's, the whole women's side. So she was definitely the best player to watch and most entertaining player to watch for sure. Another upset that I'd like to mention, with the Indiana one in the second round, they lost to Miami on 70-68. So relatively a close game, but obviously, Indiana didn't get there quite. So. And then, of course, the Stanford he mentioned, they lost in the second round to Ole Miss, and that game was 54-49. So another close game between one seeds, but they just weren't able to pull through.
And it's March Madness, so you always have to expect the unexpected, and upsets like that, will always happen. It's just an inevitability of it. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when, unless your teams such as South Carolina, which I'd like to talk about, though it's not an upset, but actually was able to avoid the upset for quite a while and actually perform to the level that they were expecting. I mean, they had great players throughout. You look at Zia Cook, Leah Boston. She was one of the top-rated players going into it, and of course, her stats kind of subsided this season, but that was more because because they were playing more of a controlled, not so, crazy high octane necessarily. It wasn't so much weight on her shoulders. It was more, tempered down. But I mean, when it came down to when they needed her the most in the important games, she averaged 17.6 points per game, 11.2 rebounds, and 2.2 blocks, all above her season averages throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely very impressive. I would also like to talk about a couple other, powerhouses, as you can say, for the women's side. So Duke and then UConn. Obviously, both of those teams are, well established, and they have the right to be in this NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, they both lost. UConn lost in the third round. Duke lost in the second round. So Duke lost to Colorado, 61-53. Close game, but obviously, Duke wasn't able to finish them out that game. And then UConn lost to Ohio State, 73-61, which was a really good game and a high-scoring game as well.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about UConn, they are just like the team within every season. So, I mean, of course, it was no surprise to see them there. Of course, you're not going to win it every time, so you figure, it's no surprise. Somebody new has to step along, such as Virginia Tech, who also made it to the Final Four, being a 1 seed and living up to expectations.
When we come back, we'll present our final thoughts for this week's episode. Stay tuned.
What does it mean to be a Warhawk?
It means allowing myself to dream big and think outside the box.
Pushing the limits of what I think is possible.
Seeing ideas through from start to finish.
Collaborating with professors and peers.
And seizing opportunities in the community to put my knowledge to use.
I'm studying abroad,
learning another language,
and listening to the stories of others.
I'm making lifelong friends and fearlessly sharing my gifts with the world.
As a Warhawk, I stay balanced,
take great care of myself,
and get out of my comfort zone.
I refuse to let the past determine my future.
And I'm taking confident steps in the direction of my dreams.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense.
And other times it couldn't be more exciting.
But I will keep my goals in mind
and never quit.
Because
that's the Warhawk way.
UWW-TV has been an important part of the campus and community since 1980.
Not only providing on-air learning opportunities for broadcast journalists and electronic media production students,
but educating and entertaining our audiences with award-winning news, live sports coverage, original programming,
as well as dedicating the mission to developing creative collaborations throughout campus.
For more information, visit our website and like us on Facebook.
Check us out because you gotta see what's on UWW-TV.
Here at UWW, we put a lot of emphasis on shaping your involvement. Involvement helps you get to know more people with similar values and goals as yourself. The Student Involvement Office can help you get involved with organizations on campus, or we can help you start a brand new one. So what are you waiting for? It's time to shape your involvement at UWW. If you'd like to learn more, stop by UC 127 or contact us at involvement@uww.edu or call 262-472-6217.
Welcome back to PEOMIOSFYRDS. Let's wrap it up by talking about our final thoughts from today's episode. So I'd like to mention, of course, Adama Sanogo being the best player in the men's championship tournament, regardless. So I definitely think he'll be one of the top prospects for the NBA draft. And then I'd also like to talk about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. That feud between them was very entertaining to watch, especially in the championship game, obviously, with all the back talk that LSU was doing. Caitlin Clark still didn't back down. She still had 30 points. So Angel Reese walked away with that best college basketball player in the country. So Caitlin Clark, obviously had the points and had, the statistics, but Angel Reese came out on top, so that's why she won it. And then the last thing I'd like to mention would be Florida Atlantic, making it all the way to the Final Four and having some big upsets, including number 4 Tennessee and number 3 Kansas State. But they did lose to San Diego State, who ended up going into the championship.
Yeah, it still breaks my heart a little with Kansas State. That was my dark horse. I had them in the final, but alas, it didn't work out. Maybe if Marquise Noel took the last shot, could have been a different story, but I digress. I'd like to mention just how crazy this past season was. I mean, the last time the Final Four has been having such low numbers was actually a UConn victory in 2011, which UConn was a 3, Kentucky 4, Butler 8, and VCU 11. Then also I'd like to mention that with the women's, it was a bit more chalk than the men's. You look at like the Final Four, 1, 1, 2, 3, definitely more seeding to the way that you would have expected it, and like even in the Elite 8 there was that greater disparity with the men lacking any single 1 seed.
That will do it for us here tonight. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time to hear more hot takes all around the world of sports. This has been Please Excuse Our Momentary Interruption of Sports from your regular daily schedule on UWW TV.